Hello! My name is Olympia, welcome to Story Time. Today I'm going to share with you the story of what is quite honestly one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened to me. It's one of those things that like you think about, me and my friends think about it like over the years, it comes back to us, it's always at the back of our minds and we always just kind of like bring it up and try and kind of like piece together exactly what happened in this scenario. There are freshers running around Bournemouth. It's like new year has just started and they're running around all over the place, and it kind of made me think about when I was at uni and this completely strange situation that we found ourselves in. I don't even know where to begin. It's honestly so weird. It is the story of a guy that we lived with. This happened in my final year of uni. We lived in a student house. There were 4 of us. There was me, there were 2 ladies, Sasha and Megan. And there was this one dude called Jay, and the story is about him and something that he did, which we've never found out why he did this. We've never been able to kind of piece together exactly what happened. Even from the very, very little that we were ever able to communicate with him. One of us was able to speak with him very, very briefly. But apart from that, vanished off the face of the earth. So I guess I will just tell you what he did. So I went to uni 2009 to 2012. So this happened 2011 going into 2012. And this one dude, Jay, was on my course. I did TV production and he was so admired. He was a guy that everyone liked. The nature of our course was that everyone was put into these crews and the crews would rotate. So you kind of knew everyone on the course. And he was someone that everyone had a great anecdote about. He was always at every party. He was a really fun guy. He was very generous. I can remember him being incredibly generous. He would always be buying people drinks. He would always bring like massive bottles of vodka to like parties and stuff. That kind of plays into our kind of theories about him in the end. But he was just a great guy, and so he needed somewhere to live. And in the final year, Sasha said to me, he can live with us. I said, I got no problem with that, fine, whatever. And he was just a great guy. He was a fairly good housemate as they go. He was tidy to a certain point. He wasn't particularly messy. He wasn't loud. He like paid the rent more or less. He was just he was fairly considerate. He was odd in his kind of mannerisms because he wouldn't change his clothes for days at a time. He would just kind of be out of the house and no one kind of knew where. So he did have a kind of mysterious edge to him, but generally speaking, perfectly fine, had no problems with him. He was the kind of person that I think on the inside, he felt like he was kind of a loser because he would lie. He was a compulsive liar, but it wasn't ever in a malicious way. He was always he would always kind of be just little untruths about like how many like girls he had slept with. And you know, kind of how much money he had, maybe. He had this weird thing where he would always the next day tell you what dream he had. And I think people telling you their dreams is the most dire, ridiculous thing ever because no one cares about your dreams. People just do not care about it. So stop telling people your dreams, please. But he would always tell us about his dreams, and he always recalled them with such preciseness that you just knew he was making them up. And they were always they had like a complimentary edge to them because it was like, oh, about you, and like, oh, because we're such good friends. There was always kind of an edge to him where you could tell the things that he was making up or he was lying about were an attempt to kind of befriend you a bit more, which is a fairly innocuous lie. Okay, it was compulsive and you could tell he was lying, but these things were always kind of slightly endearing. I thought there wasn't really a problem with it. I guess the weirdness started when he invited some friends round. They were going out. They were just going to have some drinks, and he said he'll do it in his bedroom. He didn't want to do it in the living room because he didn't want to take up the whole living room with just him and his friends, which was the kind of considerate thing that he would do. And he said to me, I think his laptop had just broken. So he said, well, can I use your iPod? We'll just put some music on and then we'll be gone by a certain point. And I was just like, it's all Hilary Duff. You don't want to listen to it, but sure, here you go. And it was a few days later, I said to him, can I get my iPod back? And he said, oh, I put it in your room, which obviously it wasn't there. And he wasn't a manipulative person, but thinking back, at the time, I just thought kind of like, I must have misplaced it. I've seen it somewhere. Where the hell, what have I done with it? But I feel like he had manipulated that and he had sold it. I feel like at the time he was in some kind of monetary problem and he pawned it or he did something to it. He took it, basically. Thinking back now, it's pretty black and white. The kid stole it. And I don't know whether or not that was just me being naive, or he had managed to kind of manipulate the situation in a way that, you know, because like nowadays, who gives a shit? But back then, like it was pretty expensive. I mean, he wouldn't have got much for it, but it was like a big deal if someone steals your iPod. Yeah, so that was my beginning of thinking. So he lies about stuff, but maybe now this is starting to become a bit of an issue. I think it was Christmas and we'd all left. We'd all gone home and he remained there. I don't think he had gone home. I think he just stayed in the house on his own, which was in itself kind of strange. And I was travelling back. I was on the bus and I received a text from Sasha, and she said that someone has broken into the house. Jay has been attacked. He has told me that a group of men, masked men, broke into the back of the house through the kind of sliding glass door. They came into his bedroom, they pinned him down, and they injected him with something to knock him out, presumably with the idea of then going and stealing stuff around the house. But if no one was there, there wouldn't have been anything of value in the house anyway, because we didn't really live there. It was a student house, so we took all our stuff with us when we went. They left some kind of really creepy note in his room, and then they skedaddled. And the place we were at was, he's been hospitalised, and the police have been notified, and he's just going to go back to his parents' house, which was in the north somewhere. So I'm just thinking, oh, hot damn, that's my jam. What is that from? Is that a song? I was just thinking, right, this is going to be a mess. The bus terminated at the uni, and Sasha's boyfriend was there for some reason. So we walked to the house together, and we were kind of just thinking about, well, what are we going to do? Like, she's obviously going to stay with you tonight. Like, I'll have to go somewhere. I'm not going to stay in this creepy house. It dawned on me, and I felt so cynical at the time. Because it's kind of a victim blaming thing. You feel so cynical and so awful that idea even crossing your mind, that he maybe have made it up. Because a lot of things were just coming to a head with this kid. We think maybe he had a gambling problem. He always had kind of money that he was flashing around, but then other times would have absolutely nothing. So I don't know what his kind of cash flow situation was, but he was just kind of a bit mysterious. And so my first thought was, I don't think he's telling the truth. I did air this opinion very kind of like cautiously in case Sasha's boyfriend was like, you are a terrible person. But we got to the house. She arrived and was in an absolute state. She was terrified. She went with him back to his house. From what we could see, his room was completely empty. He didn't have much in his room anyway. It was an odd setup. He had his bed. He had a laptop, a couple of books, and maybe like a weekend bag on the floor. That was what his bedroom always was. There was never anything decorative. He never had stuff. It was as if he was just kind of like always moving around or something. His room had been cleared out completely, and we were completely in the dark. I think what the last we knew was that the police were going to let us know, you know, what had happened, and if they had like caught whoever it was that broke in. But I didn't really have anywhere to go, so I ended up staying in the house. Overnight, I left all the lights on. I got some chocolate, like give myself like a bit of a buzz, try and keep myself up. I had some Joanna Lumley on. I remember texting Nova. We didn't know each other very well, but we were texting about stuff. I was like trying to keep myself awake for as long as she was going to be awake. And I was like hot gluing stuff just to like make stuff to kind of keep myself awake. And then when the sun came up about like 9, whatever it was, maybe that's a bit late. It was the end of the year. It was like October. As soon as the sun came up, I went to sleep. I mean, days went by and we could not get any information out of him. We tried calling him, we tried texting him to see if he was out of hospital, if he could like tell us anything about what happened. And the number had been disconnected. It no longer worked. It was like, this number is no longer in use. Okay, well, we tried on Facebook. Okay, his Facebook no longer exists. He's deleted his Facebook. Okay, this is starting to look a bit strange. I decided to call the police and I said, I'm living in a house that's been broken into and no one has ever come back to the house to kind of like do any kind of follow up or whatever. I don't know anything. Can someone please tell me what is going on, what the deal is in this house on this day? And the woman on the phone could not care less. She had the most deadpan voice and she said, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, have you found who it was? And she said, it was no one. So I'm just kind of thinking like, right, I'm so over this. Like, what are you trying to tell me? And she said, he made the whole thing up. And I just kind of was like a frustration level thing of, I knew this kid made this up. She said, no one broke in. They had done some dusting for fingerprints by the door, which we saw when we came in. She said, the back door is not broken. It still works perfectly fine. You cannot get in that way. It was just not broken into. He had no signs of any kind of injection sites. He had not been abused. He had no bruising. He had nothing. And the note that was written in his room, he had written himself. It was in his handwriting. And I was just like, well, so is he liable for some kind of like criminal conviction or whatever? Because that's a hoax. That's kind of like a hoax, which I have heard police take quite seriously. She says, no, I think we're just going to brush it off. I was just kind of like, right, ooh, is that it then? She was like, yeah, I would just talk to him. I said, you can't talk to him. He no longer exists. We have no idea where he is. Maybe we can like get his like parents' number of the landlord. She didn't want to have anything to do with it. She was just like, the rent has been paid for the rest of the time or whatever, so I don't really care. That's it, job done. So that was the last time we ever heard of him. We had theories that he had brothers who were older, and I think who were like fairly athletic and fairly successful, and you know, were either married or they had girlfriends. And I think he was the youngest one, and he really kind of compared themselves to him, and that was a problem for him. I think he was very insecure, and so he wanted people to be. This is also Megan's theory, who lived with me, and she said that he wanted people to be texting him and asking him about stuff, and he just kind of wanted to. He just kind of reignite that kind of people worrying about him and checking on him. Like, I guess like a cry for help would be the answer. But the thing is, like, we never knew what happened to him until a couple of years later when he walked into. Sasha worked in a movie theatre, and this was in London, in West London, and he walked in. He had no idea where she worked. Well, we thought anyway, because she has a very private Facebook account. She's very kind of like the government's out to get me. Hello, by the way, shout out. You're so weird. And he walked in. She was horrified. They had a quick kind of exchange, and he left. And that really was the only thing we've ever heard from him. But it was just, I mean, you can kind of weigh up if it was a coincidence that he just happened to walk into where she was working and he lived nowhere near. That's just, I don't buy that at all. So I think she had probably mentioned it somewhere that this is where she was going to be working, and he kind of tracked it down, which is so creepy. And what is the purpose? What are you trying to get out of that? Maybe because he just doesn't have any friends, and he was just trying to like connect with an old friend that you had scared the crap out of. She was terrified. I asked her recently, I said, do you think about that often? And she says, yes, how could I forget? I think about it all the time. It was so terrifying. So I've been thinking about this recently. I've been doing more kind of research trying to track him down, and I discovered that he has a LinkedIn page. Link down below. No, I'm kidding. And I mean, I don't believe he graduated. There's a lot of stuff on there which looks false to me. There's a lot of stuff which looks kind of embellished. I don't believe half the stuff. I mean, I know people bulk out their CV, whatever, but I don't believe he did graduate. He can't have done, because he left so much earlier than the rest of us and never returned, unless of course he then repeated the year, which is even creepier, because he could have got away with that because all of the people in our year would have since left, so they wouldn't have known that he was there. But I still lived here, so if he was still here for a whole year after that whole situation had happened, that's creepy. So maybe he did graduate, I don't know. There's stuff in there about him raising money and sort of handling money. And it just comes back to that whole thing, like, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going on with people. He seemed like such a kind of, I mean, lonely, yeah, kind of loserish, but perfectly innocent, perfectly fine. You just don't know what's going to kind of like suddenly twig people into being kind of like maniacs. It reminds me of the woman who faked that she was a 9/11 survivor. Do these people think that they're going to get away with these things, or do they do them so sloppily, kind of subconsciously, because they want to be found out? Because it is just a cry for help. Like, you don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I don't know these things. But it freaked us out. And I mean, seeing all these freshers running around Bournemouth, it just reminds me of my whole uni experience, which that was the icing on the cake of the fucking weird 3 years of my life. It just kind of helps you shape how you can kind of spot these people, and maybe just kind of just distance yourself from them slightly. If you can tell someone's going to end up being, you know, a liar to the extent that it kind of like damages other people. Tiny white lies once in a while are fine, but I guess the bottom line is, if I had maybe a conversation with him before this had happened, that, you know, like we wanted to live with you. Like, you're fine, you're cool as it is. You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to, you know, make up these kind of like little lies here and there just to kind of get on our side. If we say we like a certain band, you don't have to then go and do a whole bunch of research about them, just so that when we strike up a conversation about it, you can then have like a massive input. That's not why we liked you in the first place. So that it's just so incongruent. You don't have to do that. He would have conversations with Sasha about how he wanted to convert to Islam because she was a Muslim. She is a Muslim. And would have long conversations with her about it, and then would then in a heartbeat go and talk to the boyfriend about how he thought all religion was ridiculous, like tailoring each conversation to people. It's bizarre. So we never knew why he did that. I'm sure people can theorize, and I'm sure it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B, but I've mentioned this story a few times in the past, so I just thought maybe I would just like tell you the whole thing, because it was just absolutely bizarre. I've said bizarre like 3 times. That's the story of Jay. What happened to him? I think he ended up working in TV. It looks like he ended up working in TV, but again, would you go to that much bother on a LinkedIn and make all of it up? I think a lot of it is made up. So you just kind of wonder what these people's game plans are. If it's just ingrained in them to just lie constantly, I don't know. Why do you think he did it? Let's just open the floor. Megan has theories that are quite solid, and Sasha, I think, just gets so freaked out by it that she doesn't ever want to talk about it, really. But I said I'd do this video, and she said, yeah, do it as well, and we'll just see what happens. So the names have been changed, so you can't find him, you can't track him down, and I wouldn't worry about him ever seeing this, because I mean, I don't know, he probably does. I mean, if he stalked Sasha, he probably would stalk me. But if you're watching this, hello! Fucking answer a text or something. Hi, Jay. Where did it all go wrong? And let me know what you think regarding this. Please subscribe to our channel, click the button down below, click the little notification bell to get notifications. And I've done a full podcast about this, like a whole hour and a bit, kind of really going into extra details about this kid's life. But that's on Patreon if you want to become a patron. All right, thanks guys, love you!
And a warm welcome to our new patron babies, Emily Bell, Melanie Walters, Sam B and Coco Solamente. To join the family, hit up patreon.com/Novympia.